All right. Ryan, what time is it there? It's what? 5? Is it 5 or
4:14.
4?
Yeah, it's
4:14.
4.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Good. It's noon time here in Hawaii, and I got in yesterday, so I'm still adjusting. I woke up at 4 a.m. and I'm like, it's still dark out. What do I do? So we have our deep dive coming up for our pivot members next week. And, as a part of that, I wanted to meet with everybody, do a quick Facebook Live, give everybody introductions and that kind of stuff. I think the world of, software as it pertains to job management in the world of property restoration is constantly changing and evolving. You can never get enough information about who's out there doing what. And, even your product in particular has a track record of continuing to innovate and evolve with the needs of what our community has. And so, just want to shine a light in that corner and give restorers proximity to what's happening in software. So why don't we start with, who is PSA? Give us the origin story of the organization, why it was created and what you guys are hoping to accomplish.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me here, Anthony. And, the origin story of PSA actually starts way back in 1994. PSA actually stood for Proven Solutions Accounting. So believe it or not, as much as we're painted as a job management system, our origins actually come from the accounting space and the numbers game.
Interesting.
And believe it or not, it wasn't actually until 2002 that we were actually even introduced to the restoration space. And when we came in here, obviously Xactimate and their products were really leading the charge in estimating and job management. And the timing, obviously, for us, they had just come off of kind of scrapping their Exact Account product. So they were kind of like, hey, we're looking to connect with accounting systems. So there's a seamless transition between estimate and invoice. And we kind of just fit into the model that they had. So at the time when we integrated, it was to the capacity of their estimating platform integrating to our accounting system.
Nice.
And then over time,
what was where was PSA's area of expertise prior to coming to restoration?
We did a lot of service and repair and kind of quick turnaround. Our origin was job costing and work orders, really kind of from call comes in to booking the work to turning that into an invoice, kind of same day turnaround.
Oh, good. Okay.
And then obviously being introduced into restoration, the methodology was hey, with a couple of tweaks, you guys could work for contractors. And so we were like, oh, okay, that sounds like something that we could get involved in. And then obviously decades later, we're still tweaking because this industry keeps changing and evolving. And so had we known, obviously, the extent, we may have been oh, I don't know, this is going to be a big undertaking. But we kind of came in blind saying okay, how much more could a job management system take to kind of flesh out? And obviously the extent of compliance and workflow complexities. And to your point, the sheer amount of data that's involved in just kind of taking a job from start to finish is a substantial amount that has to be managed and maintained throughout that process. So from our perspective, we evolved from a job management system to what we're calling ourselves today as an ERP, which is really we handle the intake side, we handle the job management side, we handle all the job costing, the budgeting, accounting, sales and marketing, relationship management and referral tracking, because all of these pieces are critical for a contractor to be able to manage their operation in one complete solution.
Wow.
And the things that we identified early on in this industry was everything was very disconnected, right? So my accounting didn't talk to my job management, my estimating platform didn't talk to my CRM. And so people were running, 5, 6, 7 systems, all manually keying information in from one spot to another. And so that's something that we look to eliminate or try to eliminate where we can, and then really kind of integrate with these systems that are kind of footholds in this industry that, hey, if you're going to play in this space, you have to tie into all of these critical pieces that are already established.
Nice. I know in my own experience, we built our software infrastructure and really doubled down between 2018 and 2019, and to the extent of $250,000 worth of investment over 18 months, trying to just get everything connected to Power BI. And so I appreciate what, the vision, right? And also understand the complexity of how it's never perfect, right? It just and as things evolve, you'll constantly be chasing your tail trying to make it all work, for sure. What's your role at PSA? Like, I've known you forever, but if you said, what's Ryan's job? I'm like, well, he's the sales guy, right?
Right. Some people say I'm the jack of all trades, but the official title that was just actually announced at the end of 23 is VP of Sales and Marketing.
Okay.
So all right. I handle a lot of the vision of the branding, the marketing, kind of doing these interviews, answering questions, kind of speaking to educating people on what we're trying to accomplish and where we fit into the ecosystem, so that, I think there's a mentality of, oh, you're painted as a job management system or you're painted as an accounting system. So there's a lot of understanding, even the terms. People use the term job management and CRM interchangeably. They're very different things.
Yes.
Right. So there's a lot of just kind of educating people on the ecosystem and what's important and the importance of data and security, especially in this space when the new buzzword again with AI is being able to take all of that data and start to organize it in a way that it will help our people make decisions in the business.
Yeah. You've been at PSA for quite a while, yeah? When did you?
Since 2010 of October.
2010 of October. Okay.
Yeah.
And how did you my running joke is none of us were sitting in a sandbox at 6 years old going, I want to be in the restoration industry, right? We all kind of fall in here some way. So how'd you end up getting in with PSA?
Well, believe it or not, I guess I have to blame my father for that. So he's the founder of PSA and Can-Am Systems.
Oh, no shit. I never knew that.
Yeah. He approached me actually in the late 2000s saying, hey, we're growing. I really need somebody who can take on the sales side and kind of help build a team and flesh that out. At the time, I was doing odd jobs in retail. My background is marketing and advertising, and so I have the creative side. So I thought with his analytical side and my creative side, the two of us could kind of get together and start to build this company into something bigger. And so he brought me in as an outsider, and they were just transitioning to the restoration space when I got into the company. They'd only been in the industry, for a couple of years, and they were just kind of getting that foothold into finding where their place was in this ecosystem.
Wow. And is your dad still with the business?
Believe it or not, December 31st, 2023, he retired.
Did he?
Yeah.
Sigh of relief or sad to see him go?
It was one of these things where when you're getting ready to retire, it's kind of like years in the making. So the writing was kind of on the wall for the last couple of years. He absolutely loved dealing with customers. And actually, a funny story, he had called me a couple weeks ago because we're having our user conference in Dallas, and he said, I know I'm retired, but if you're cool, maybe I could call some customers and invite them to the conference. And I was like, you literally just announced your retirement. I think you would
still be in the game.
Yeah, I think it'd be odd if they just all of a sudden Scott starts calling them, on the phone. Hey, come to this user conference. I thought you retired. Well, it's hard to pry yourself away from, being busy every day. And he poured almost his entire career into software and building something. So it's really hard to kind of just stop that and then, not have anything to kind of keep you going. So we try and keep him, busy and hopefully he's retired and skiing, every day. We're finally just getting snow now here in the Toronto area. So Yeah, so we have a new CEO now, Togatari. He has some background, obviously, in this industry. He helped kind of create products like Client Runner and
Mhm.
Moisture Mapper. So he's at the forefront of kind of driving the overall vision of the company and helping us kind of grow into, where do we take PSA next?
Yeah. When Client Runner disappeared, there was like a very small but very vocal section of our community that was super sad.
Right.
And
Yeah.
the graphical dispatch, like I will never forget. I worked for a Honolulu company, and they had Client Runner for their carpet cleaning side, and their
Okay.
graphical dispatch board, like Joe's going here, right? Like,
Yep.
well, that was good. That was good. Why do you stay in the industry? Right? We figured out how you got here.
Yep.
Why do you
So
stay?
for me, I mean, I wish I could say that there's a dull moment in this industry where like I kind of get bored and like there's nothing to do. Every day, it almost like it brings new challenges. And even like with technology, the rate that things are changing,
Mm-hmm.
just from technology's perspective, obviously having come back from the interconnect,
Mm-hmm.
show and all the splashing about like where is this industry going, it just energizes you. Like this is
Yep.
going to keep me busy for the next 5 or 6 years of just like what's next, like where are we going to go from here. And honestly, the excitement of it, of finally having been kind of from a standpoint of there wasn't a lot of options technology wise kind of starting out in this industry. It was very disconnected. You were either part of the club or you weren't part of the club. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like now we've finally hit that cusp where like all these great innovative tools are coming out, and
Mm-hmm.
there's this willingness now to like, yeah, let's connect everyone together. Let's be part of something better and know that we can't do it alone. And that's, obviously that's a quote taken from, Garrett's,
Mm-hmm.
entry speech from Interconnect, but it's true. I mean, finally this breath of fresh air where we can collaborate together, we can work towards a common goal where we can benefit the contractor and the carrier and the TPAs and all of these people coexisting where it's a win-win for everybody.
So, and you can abstain from answering this question because it's a little
Sure.
bit of a hand grenade.
Yep.
Who wins the integration race between the behemoths, CoreLogic and Verisk? Right?
I
Because
mean,
that seems to be the new, like, okay, everybody's recognized we can't do it all, right?
yeah.
We've got to create APIs and that kind of stuff. If you had to bet on who's going to have the best, most user-friendly API integration, who would you bet on?
So originally I was going to say my answer was going to be Varus because they definitely have a head start. But then you
Uh-huh.
went and you said best and most intuitive and
Yeah,
optimized. And honestly, I mean, again, I don't have a crystal ball here, but I can
nobody
tell you
does.
that the framework that CoreLogic has and the newer technologies and thing, they're very slick, they're very, innovative in the forefront of what the people that are under that umbrella right now that they have at their
Mhm.
disposal. They may have started a little bit later, obviously, than the Varus people, but they're
Mhm.
gaining speed on a crazy momentum right now. And so just based on kind of what the trajectory of what we've seen, even from the last 3 years of, where both of those
Yeah.
companies have started and where they are right now, I mean, they're going at 100 miles an hour, the CoreLogic guys. And I don't see them slowing down, to be honest, anytime soon.
Yeah. I love the fact that there's competition in a race, period. Right. And I
Totally.
think that that leads to the innovation that we all need
Yeah.
in the industry right now.
I think obviously to your point, competition breeds innovation, right? Like
Mhm.
if there's only one choice and you can't go anywhere else, what's the point of innovating? I mean,
Yep.
it just stays on that trajectory. Like, hey, we're not having to change. We have one path, one course that we're on, and it's not healthy for the industry, and it's not healthy for innovating
Mhm.
when there's not a whole bunch of players in the game where everyone's got to kind of keep on edge. Like, okay, what's this person doing? They're kind of
Mhm.
they're kind of excelling in this area. Now we got to reevaluate what we're doing, right? So it keeps
Mhm.
those checks and balances healthy. Where I think competition is good, for any
Yep.
industry. And I think the value benefits everybody that plays within that ecosystem.
Yeah, and putting a contractor hat on, no risk, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're in the software industry, there's risk and exposure if somebody's whipping your tail, right? But
totally.
I think, and I think that those in the software space, those that are honest and sincere will continue to keep up and will continue to innovate, right? Like I don't see anybody getting left in the dust except by their own volition and the fact that they gave up.
Yeah, and I truly believe that people will inevitably choose the system that best fits their needs, right? And if you make it so that ability to embrace those technologies, to integrate into those technologies, to have growth with those businesses, those are things that people are looking for as a way to say, like, this person is here to help me pick and choose the best in class, the best tech stack, right? So to speak, where I can now build what makes sense for my organization and not be penalized to say, well, if I go this direction, I can't use these tools, or this is going to add, so much complexity. So we've always, even early on, have been in the frame set that we know that we can't be the masters in all of these different areas. So rather than reinvent the wheel, connecting the dots for people allows choice. And I think that's ultimately what people want.
I agree. And you kind of laid it up for my next question. You have a software product that is designed to fix certain pain points for restorers. And that kind of sets who your customer profile is. And so who makes a good PSA customer?
I mean, for us, I always try to break people into like 3 tiers, because in the beginning, we just said, hey, in order to utilize our tools, you got to have the resources and the willingness to make the system work. And for us in the beginning, that like under $1 million startup, brand new company, they struggled with our, old systems, because it required a lot of manpower and resources to make it work. The people there pushing buttons, flipping switches. Right. We've started to evolve, and we really want to cater to that under $1 million and new startup kind of business who they need the tool, but they can't fully commit to putting all that information into it. So there's the level 1 type customer where you're just getting started. You can't handle our full suite of products, but there's kind of like an inroads for you to get started with, right? It's very basic, very simple, gives you the core of what you need to start to understand how to organize information and ultimately how to start to leverage it. But you may not be ready necessarily for our accounting, let's say. And so we've created these tiers where once you've outgrown systems like the QuickBooks and Sages, where you're like, hey, I'm managing a large volume of jobs. I'm trying to keep track of all of our revenue. People tend to use the term WIP a lot in this space, but don't fully understand the impact of it. So when we have all these costs, but no way of recognizing revenue because we're tied to an accounting system that requires us to put invoices in regularly and trying to keep up with them, that's where you start to evolve to our, what I like to call our ideal customer, where, you're starting to get over 2, 3, 4 million. You have people, they have specific roles, they're accountable for those roles. And our system fits great into that culture, where it not only acts as a way to organize information, but it points out all the things that are getting missed. Hey, what are we missing on our job that we need to run these reports to be able to know what we need to do? And it does hold a layer of accountability, but it still requires people to manage the system, right? I've yet to see a software out there that runs completely autonomous, where there's no people involved and, things are going all through AI. So we're still in that era where you need good people, you need a structure, you need behaviors and processes in place for the system to deliver what it needs to make you successful.
Got it. Understood. A fun fact in the growth and evolution of Premier, we didn't start doing WIP until we had crested far beyond 20 million in annual revenue. And still to this day, I do not know how we survived. And we were growing super quick, man. So I get how it all happened, but I look back on that and I'm like, wow, like missed opportunity for sure.
I mean, people, believe it or not, I mean, we run into very large companies that are still doing things today on spreadsheets, and they're making it work because they're putting a ton of effort into making sure that those things are going off consistently. But they're putting in way too much time and effort when they can do things a lot more simply if they leverage those technologies that are out there.
I agree. So we talked about who makes a good PSA customer. Who are the folks that you chase away because you're like, you know what? I just know you're not going to be happy, right?
Yeah.
So let me be a good steward to you and say, look, this isn't the solution for you.
I mean, there's a couple of keywords that immediately red flag in my mind when I'm talking to a customer.
Yeah.
And one of them is when I say, how much time do you have to invest in the system? And they either say none or very little. That to me is, and it really could be any size business. Like, I'm not saying like it's just the under $1 million guys that say that. I've talked to companies that, to your point, are like 15 and 20 million. And I say, how much time do you have invest in the system? And I'm talking to like a controller or general manager level position. And right off the gate, they're like, not much.
Yeah.
And again, this goes back to the point of how are we holding people accountable? What is the culture in the business to be able to leverage these systems? I can provide the best tools in the industry, but if I can't get people to use them, they're worthless.
Yeah.
Right. And so things like that. And certainly when you have companies where I say like, well, how do you set up from a production standpoint? Do you have project managers and estimators? And the owner says, well, I'm the marketer, I'm the estimator, I'm the project manager, I'm in the field, I'm doing work, I'm back in the office. And ultimately, they can't be successful when they're trying to wear all the hats and still run a system. Because what's going to happen is if they can't put the information in, they're not going to be able to generate any reports or any of this information out. So it's just going to be this angst and frustration that they get to say, like, I'm investing all this money, I'm not seeing a return on my investment.
Yeah. So among the PSA customers you have, what do you see those that are you would regard as highly successful? What else are they doing in addition to using your systems? Right? Like what are they working on and how are they elevating themselves and finding success in a market that has a lot of problems?
Right. I would say that in my experience of finding a difference between a customer who's just using, let's say, 20% of our system to somebody who's using 80% of our system, a lot of what that boils down to is being very detail oriented and understanding the information that you're looking at. Right? Again, we talk about data, we talk about the importance of it. Companies who just click and they get, okay, I understand how to get this information in. I understand what I need to look at. Once those hooks are in, it's very difficult to kind of detach them from that environment. And from our perspective, because of all the different areas we look at, financial, production, sales, to have all that visibility in real time and being able to utilize and review that information. I think one of the key quotes that I always hear is, what gets measured is what gets done. And to me, from a philosophy standpoint of systems and the purpose of them, they're used as kind of a window into driving business decisions. So not only being able to just say, hey, I've entered all my jobs into the system, but to say, now that the jobs are in there, what should we be looking at as a business to manage all of these goals to help us grow and scale? Is it looking at the bottlenecks? Is it looking at what we do well? Is it looking at things like close ratios and profit percentages by employees so that we, again, can leverage that information as an organization to really scale and grow? Those companies that just get it, those are the ones that typically we see end up utilizing a much higher percentage because they're almost data hungry. There's not enough data for them to really start to make those decisions. So companies like that, and even with technologies today, like the BI tools and Tableau, where you can take data from all over the place and you can slice and dice it so you can watch it on your phone, you can look at it on a tablet, and it allows you to really get a pulse on all of these things that are happening in your business, where even if you were sitting at a desk in an office, you wouldn't catch these things just looking around, right? It's all based on the actions that our entire team is putting together, so we can see everything big picture, right, from that system and all elements of it.
And I think that resonates with what we do here at Pivot, and the fact that we start all of our peer group calls with a deep dive on the numbers, right? It's common in business consulting, where consultant shows up and goes, "Hey, Ryan, tell me what's bothering you today," right? Because there's always something, but if you're running a business the right way, something's always getting your goat. And as opposed to doing that, we invert it and we say, look, here's what the data says about your business. Does that align with what you're concerned about? And a majority of the time, like us as business owners, we have a high level of intuition. And, like a lot of the times the data is just confirming what we already know about our business. But in those times where the data is sending a red flag that we're not seeing with our eyes, like those are threats that you can eliminate before they become true threats. And that's why we start every single one of our peer group calls with a deep dive on the data.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think that, just like most systems out there, I feel like we can always improve on information, and we can always improve on those gaps in our business if we pay attention, not just to the numbers, but to all the information that's being put in there. There's always ways to get better. It's like, riding a bicycle or playing a sport, where the more you kind of get involved and it becomes second nature, and the consistency of it, you can start to really master that craft by going in and starting to look at all those areas that you can tweak and improve just by looking at the data in your system.
Yep.
Right.
Completely agree. I got to give you the opportunity, since I've been lobbing questions at you this whole time. What questions do you have for me?
Well, I mean, again, you have a chance, Anthony, to obviously talk to a lot of industry experts. You have a chance to talk to a lot of contractors. I guess my question to you is, in 2024, what would you say are going to be the biggest challenges that contractors are going to be struggling with, not just with technology, but in businesses themselves?
Kind of cash cycle right now is a problem we're seeing uniformly across our membership. And I know that resonates across the industry. Carriers are slower to pay than they have been in the past. And we see it on our members. One of the things that we track is what's the percentage of AR over 90, right, for a lot of our clients. And we're just watching that number go up and up. I don't necessarily think it's all on behalf of the carrier. I think that there's a lot of complexity to it. One of the things that came up in one of our peer groups was how slow mail delivery has been, like receiving checks that were postmarked in November in the first week of January, right? Yeah. So I don't necessarily think it's just carriers are slow to pay checks. I think there's some nuance that's cascading into it. And as the insurance carriers themselves start to require more and more information to pay and substantiate claims, I think we as contractors have a lot of work to do to catch up to that expectation if we're not already hitting it. And so, I'm all about putting things in the Venn diagram of things you can control and things you can do something about, and only operating in the overlap of those two circles, and improving the information that you give that's attached to your invoice is definitely in that bucket for me.
Yeah. And I guess that was going to be my follow-up question to you, is that, do we think that the core of that issue has to do with the fact that there's not enough data to kind of prompt a quicker resolution, or is there more factors in play?
Like I could speculate, and there's probably 10 things that I think about regularly. If you just look at the earnings profiles of a majority of the insurance carriers that service property insurance, a lot of them are not doing that well, right? And just like any one of us, if we're running a business and we're starting to watch our cash go down, what do? We drag out our payables, right? Like some of us do it in better or worse ways, right? The way I would always go is I'd go talk to like the subs that we did a lot of volume with. I'd be like, look, normally I would cut you a check right now, but can you give me another 14 days? Right.
Yeah.
Or when I went to do capital expenditures, I may use financing as a vehicle as opposed to the outlay of cash. Right. There's a number of different strategies you can use to preserve cash in a business. But I think when you look at it through the lens of the insurance carriers, that is a strategy for them. The longer it takes for them to pay, they can stretch the cash. And really, when I look at that ecosystem and the cycle and I'm paying attention, it circles back to underwriting, and the price for the premium has not kept pace with inflation, and then demand, right? And it was interesting, you mentioned Interconnect. When we were sitting there, they had one of the topics was on, reviewing construction pricing trends over the past 3 years. And the comment that was made, I actually wrote it down because my blood boiled a little bit, and I need to calm down, right?
Yeah.
Because everybody has their perspective. There's no right or wrong opinions.
Right.
But what they were talking about was labor wages, right? Labor wages, they had estimated increased 14% since January of 2020, which, okay, I take argue with that. No way. Not in my market, maybe in Topeka, Kansas. I don't know, but here's my thought there. And then they talked about soft costs, and really what has been driving the marketplace over the past 3 years is this bucket of soft costs that they recognize, where that's like rent, shipping, all the things that attach to labor but are not labor.
Right.
And what was interesting is they referenced because there's an increase in demand that's not being met by supply, it has created a bucket they referred to as dirty soft cost, meaning that there's an expectation on behalf of contractors, because they're in such high demand, that they should be paid more profit margin than before. And, I share that with you to say, I kind of took issue with that statement, because across the clients that we serve, if anybody's making more money now than they were 3 years ago, it's because of all the hard work they've done to improve their processes and how they've innovated over time, not because of any mass changes in pricing. In fact, that has become one of the bigger challenges that I see for restorers is, hey, because both of these two pricing databases struggle to keep pace with inflation and all these costs that we're incurring in real time.
Yeah.
How do we cover the gap, so to speak?
Well,
through creative
and
estimating and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. There's, and I mean, I've sat in a ton of those discussions throughout the years too. And that basically what it boils down to is there's always this lag of data, right? Because the pricing is typically based on what information they get fed to them after the fact. Mm-hmm. Right. So when you think about what people are spending today, by the time that data reaches the analyst who's going through and saying this geographical area should be coded this way, there's a time gap between when that's happening. So we're always behind the curve. So if anything, I mean, again, from my perspective, nothing's gone down in price. It's not like there's some secret sauce out there where someone's figured out this really good area to buy reduced pricing for materials to raise their margins. Everything's going up: labor, materials, subs, right? I mean, it seems very taboo to me to stipulate that somehow we've figured out a way to jack up margins, even though the cost of everything else has increased all around us.
Yeah. And I don't doubt that it occurs. I know in the sub trade markets, I've seen it where a guy that does Venetian plaster, right? Yeah. He's the only guy on Maui that does Venetian plaster, and he's got a crew of 4, and he's like, you know what? I'm in such high demand, I'm just going to raise price and curtail demand for a little bit and make a little bit more money. But eventually, that falls down to wages and everything. So it may be this blip in time, but the overall trend remains pretty consistent as those lines dance across it, for sure. But anyway, that's what I can't stop thinking about. I don't know.
I think price will always be a hot topic, in this industry. I think it's one of these things it's always discussed at these conferences, but at the same time, not discussed. No one's unveiling the curtain about how all this, really works. but there's a lot of kind of animosity between, are we getting fair pricing and costing, and can we see this, and do we have the ability to change that if we submit details? Like where does the contractor play into this kind of song and dance as far as being able to submit information and yields and things like that? So it's been a discussion since I've been in this industry, and it's still, right at the top of the list as to the hot topics that always get thrown around.
Yeah. And the one thing I will say is that's universally true is if contractors take the time and energy to understand what their true cost basis is, like either ideally on a per project basis, but if not on a per project basis, just look at the profit centers within your business, right? Your different mitigation lines versus your reconstruction lines, and baseline that on the hours and say, look, I need to earn X dollars in revenue per hour. And most of us can look at a project and go, okay, that's 2 guys for, a week or whatever, and kind of swag it and go, okay, if it's 2 guys for a week, then it better be X number of dollars. And okay, when I sit down and I start hammering code in Xactimate or whatever, I got a bogey that I need to hit. Right. And so I think that, to the Venn diagram, right? Things we care about, things we can do something about. Smack dab in the middle of that is knowing your costs. If you know your costs, you can arm yourself for intelligent dialogue. And by and large, what we tend to negate in this a lot of the times is a lot of the times we're still dealing with people, and people tend to be reasonable given an explanation. Right. And so I kind of rest on that, like every job's unique. We got to have conversations around it. And if you know your cost, you're probably going to get what you need for that job. But if you don't know your cost and you're relying on one of these 2 entities in their costing database, like you may not, and you won't know until you do it.
Right. And to your point, you got to start somewhere. I mean, like if you're thinking you're going to jump from not knowing your cost to knowing every dollar and cent on a job, it doesn't happen like that. It's a lot of it has to do with the culture. Right. So if you can teach people how to start organizing those things and understanding those things, they're only going to get better as you kind of start progressing through that. But you got to take that first step in understanding. And I think some people like to wear their blinders, when it comes to costs and understanding direct and indirect and really how that all bogs down. And they have this philosophy, like, I have to look backwards to know, where we're going forward. And that's kind of the wrong approach to, and I think it's an old accounting philosophy where they had those abacuses where they're counting, all these things that happened in the past, but nobody's planning, nobody's budgeting, nobody's putting the dollars and cents and really understanding what those costs balance out to. Right. And I think, the more you educate both, your team, Anthony, and a lot of the groups out there, the more that we educate people on the importance of the numbers and how they can actually benefit them, I think is better for this industry as a whole.
Totally agree. Any closing thoughts?
My mind's literally a blank.
I just start your brain on fire. You're like, yeah, I got a question for you, Anthony. Let's go down this rabbit hole.
Right. Immediately regret.
Well, I used to live in Detroit, right across the river from the Canadians. So I'm like kind of an honorary Hanai Canadian. So. Well,
anytime you want to come back, the weather's been a bit funky lately, but you're always welcome. I'm sure it's not as nice as Hawaii, but
nope,
we got all 4 seasons here.
You that. Yeah. Right on, man. Well, thank you so much for taking some time to sit down and talk story with me today. And I know on behalf of our members, we're really looking forward to the content you've got prepared for us for our deep dive on PSA and your systems next week. Thanks so much.
Well, thanks again for the opportunity, Anthony. I look forward to talking to you guys next week.
Right on. Aloha.
All right. Thanks, Anthony.